So I spoke to that fact that with mass migration, one of the things that I commented on was that I feel like there's a lack of, or an aversion to, assimilation. We've always made it seem as if assimilation is a bad thing. Assimilation doesn't mean getting rid of who you are. It doesn't mean I'm never going to stop being a Nigerian person. I love my food. I love my traditional attire. I am very proudly Nigerian. But what assimilation means to me is finding common ground, right? Yes, I'm Nigerian. You might be from Pakistan. What's the common ground? It's that common ground that prevents people from fighting. It's that common ground that enables you to live in a safe and peaceful country. And so when I think about assimilation, I think about common ground, and I don't think there's been enough of an effort to create that common ground. What's shocking to me is that I don't think anybody in Canada, and beyond me, I don't think anybody in Canada should be afraid of being fired for being conservative. And I think at the very least that the board should have done a bit of due diligence. They should have. Frank told me on the call that he had not even read the comments yet. So my question is, as board chair, you haven't read the comments yet. So on what grounds are you requesting my resignation? Just because,
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News in the lovely home of Comfort Sakoma. You may recognize that name. It's been making its round in headlines recently, and up until very recently, Comfort was the vice chair for the Vancouver Police Board. That is until some of her statements on her private Instagram were shared, in particular by Jazz Johal, former BC MLA and current radio host, CKNW News. Those comments, go figure, were taken offense to by some on the so-called tolerant left, and even one prominent figure on the so-called conservative right. We're going to get to that shortly. You should know the comments are also being deemed by many, I dare say perhaps the majority, as being centrist in nature and downright Canadian. They relate to things like parental rights, the erasure of Christian values and their recognition in today's society, as well as the effects of mass immigration on what you refer to as Canada's changing identity. I'm here to bring you the other side of the story, which is in fact Comfort's side of the story. Let's take a look.
Yeah, well, firstly, when you hear your name, so for me, that was on Friday. I started getting a whole bunch of links from people that I love and know saying, hey, what's going on? And when I, read one of the articles, I just sort of curled up into a ball because, of course, for anyone who knows me, those articles did not in any way, shape, or form represent my views. And I was really just shocked at how much what I said and was trying to communicate was taken out of context. And even before you could kind of respond to one, before I knew it, it felt like all of the media had already gone and run with the story. And then you had individuals that were messaging me in my private DM, coming at me, attacking me. I had people saying they hope I die. There were people that were saying that if they ever see me on the streets, they're going to punch me. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, here I am. What if I'm outside with my 2-year-old? And so it became, I think, important for me to ensure that my side of the story went out. What I would hate is in, a year or two when I'm applying for an opportunity or I want to be part of something big, they Google me and that comes up. It can be a deterrent, right? And so I figured, well, at the very least, let me make sure that my side of the story is out there and leave it to people to be the judge.
Well, speaking of being a part of something big, you have been doing that for many years. Something that I also didn't see in those articles is your very impressive work that you've done, in particular empowering women, African women in some cases, but women across the world to be leaders in entrepreneurship. You've done partnerships with your company with big names like Google, Intel. You've got awards, and you were even, when you were younger, I guess you were part of the Navy Cadets for Canada. So what, above all that, do you think made you a good candidate for your role on the Vancouver Police Board?
Thanks. What actually made me join or apply to join the board was a really good friend of mine, a constable, an officer that I have so much love and admiration for, Constable Darren Ramdor, told me about a program called the Citizens Police Academy. And what that is, it's a 6-week one-day-a-week program where ordinary citizens are able to come and learn about the Vancouver Police Department. And so I applied, I was selected, and I participated. And as part of the training, I learned that Canadian police departments are governed by civilian boards. And I was like, that's amazing. I'd never actually even knew that. And so as part of that training, we were given a tour of the building. We were taken up to the 7th floor where I was able to, which is where the board office is. And as soon as I came out of the elevators, there's a picture, or there's on the wall, there are pictures of the board members, as well as the executive department of the police department. And my question, which I said out loud, was, wow, why are there no Black or brown people on this wall? And I mean, there would be. I mean, there's definitely brown people, but there certainly wasn't a single Black person. And I thought, well, it's kind of odd that a department, but also a board that's meant to govern an entire city, doesn't have anyone that can speak to the experiences of people who are usually most impacted by some of the, I guess, less positive side of policing. And so I inquired, how do you become a board member? And I was told that there's actually a spot available, that I should apply. And so one of the board members at the time, Marilee Robinson, amazing woman, gave my reference so that I could make that application. When I was applying, a lot of folks told me, don't bother because there's never been a Black person on the board before, so I'm not sure you'll get it. But thankfully, it was a very fair interview process, and it took about 12 months from the day that I applied to the day that I received a letter saying, congratulations, you've been selected. So in terms of what I think made me a good candidate for it, one is the fact that, this was right in the aftermath of COVID, George Floyd, and of course, Black Lives Matter. And I think I had a position on the whole defund the police debate that made me, I think, a good bridge between the community and the department. My position was that if I needed to call 911, I would hate to hear there are no officers available, so you're gonna have to wait 30 minutes to get a car. I'd want to know that within 2 to 5 minutes, an officer would be at my door. Mm-hmm. So the idea of defunding the police to me was not the right idea. Also, I felt that while that was true, there's also work that needs to be done in terms of bridging the relationship between community and building trust in our communities. And I felt that as a person who's usually quite nuanced and balanced, that I would be a good person to be able to do that. And so that's how that happened. And I'll just add that before becoming a board member, I was one of the founding members of the Vancouver Police Department's African Descent Committee. And what that was, I was part of a team of people that thought that we should create a standing committee that is able to meet with the department on a week-to-week basis, on a month-to-month basis, to speak about issues in the Black community and how we can maybe fix some of those. And I stepped down from that committee to become a board member. So that whole experience brought me to the table.
Wow, again, impressive there. And everything you said there, maybe we'll move the do not defund the police aside, that common sense belief. But everything else you said there is so aligned with what the left, for lack of better words, says they stand for, and even the Vancouver Police Department, or they say they stand for things like diversity. It sounds like you were a good candidate until you opened your mouth and went against the grain, or did you? So let's talk about a little bit about the actual posts that were reshared on Reddit by Jas Joe Hall. Talk about why you posted them, or what you posted. And you should know, as we're watching, the Vancouver Police has said that this goes against the code. So
what was shared was, so first of all, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last week released a series of videos reflecting on, to a certain degree, his self-admitted failed economic, not just economic, but immigration policies. He acknowledged that there are a lot of bad actors. We're yet to determine who those bad actors are. But he said that there are a lot of bad actors and that as a result of this, there's been a lot of abuse in our immigration system. Consequently, things like cutting back on the number of people that will be able to apply for PR, flip-flopping on the opportunities available for students, international students after they graduate, and so on and so forth. And I'd seen that Pierre Poilievre had made comments around, we've been saying for years that the sort of open door policies have long-term consequences, and are you considering these in the immigration planning? And so there was a lot of just discussion online about this. Now, I have to say for the 100th time to everybody that I am Nigerian Canadian. And what that means is that I have access to information about how things like immigration affect people in real time. What was posted was the tail end of a much larger and longer conversation. It started off with a discussion about tariffs and the impact of tariffs on economies. I then went into a conversation about immigration and the fact that a lot of people do use student visas as a pathway to citizenship. And now that you're saying that they can't apply for immigration papers, well, how does that affect people that have already invested in being in Canada? In some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Are you just going to tell them that, sorry, thanks for your money, but now things have changed? So there was commentary about that. What was eventually posted was where I started with a warning that I have been signaling forever. And I've been saying that Canada has changed. Anybody that grew up in this country, and I did, I grew up in Montreal, I lived in Toronto as a teenager, went abroad for 12 years and then came back. So I've lived on the East Coast, I've lived here on the West Coast. There's no one that has grown up here that will not say that Canada has changed. And we're not just talking about a physical sort of diversity change. A lot of what made us Canadian, including what would make our neighbors to the south laugh at us, like the idea that if you bump into a Canadian, they say sorry to you. You think about that and it seems so insignificant, but it speaks to a culture that has, in my view, completely changed. A lot of the things that, and I point to some of this in the video, the fact that growing up, we were able to say Merry Christmas. And for the longest time, that's been something that we can't say. The fact that, I don't feel like I necessarily have anything in common anymore with people around me. And it's not just me. When I speak to young kids, 10, 12, 13 years old, and you ask them, how's school going and so on and so forth, particularly for Black children, there's a sense of erasure. There's a sense of lost identity. There's a sense that, I don't really know where I belong. People identify more in Canada today with their heritage or their countries of origin, their tribes, than they do being Canadian. And growing up, we sold this as something that was a good thing. We said America's a melting pot and Canada's a multicultural mosaic where everybody's able to be their own person. Well, the challenge with that is that it sort of creates cliques, right? And because of survival of the fittest, what you end up happening is individual cliques are just trying to, it pits people against each other. And so what I was saying was, we need to get back to building national pride. And some of the ways that you're able to build national pride are things like, rallying around our heroes, like Terry Fox. What's wrong with Terry Fox? The man ran across the country with one leg to raise money. If you ask newcomers, name me 3 Canadian heroes and what they did, I'm pretty sure they won't know the answer to that. How do you then foster a sense of pride amongst people about our shared identity as being Canadian? So I spoke to that fact that with mass migration, one of the things that I commented on was that I feel like there's a lack of, or an aversion to, assimilation. We've always made it seem as if assimilation is a bad thing. Assimilation doesn't mean getting rid of who you are. It doesn't mean, I'm never going to stop being a Nigerian person. I love my food. I love my traditional attire. I am very proudly Nigerian. But what assimilation means to me is finding common ground, right? Yes, I'm Nigerian. You might be from Pakistan. What's the common ground? It's that common ground that prevents people from fighting. It's that common ground that enables you to live in a safe and peaceful country. And so when I think about assimilation, I think about common ground, and I don't think there's been enough of an effort to create that common ground.
Now, one of the comments, which sort of relates to that you brought up, that's getting all of this backlash, and when I read it, I don't see it the way it seems to be getting interpreted, at least in these news reports, and that was your statement about Diwali, your son having an experience with it in school and sort of a revelation you had. Go over that.
Yeah. So I'll preface that by saying that I've been to India multiple times. I had the opportunity to work with the second largest think tank in all of Asia. It's called the Observer Researcher Foundation. I did a really great research project with them. I always say that second to Dubai, India probably has some of the best hospitality. So India is a country that not only that I've been to, but that I was very well received in. So I have very fond memories of that. As part of those trips, I've visited Hindu temples. I was able to participate in a Diwali festival while in India. And so I have absolutely nothing against Diwali. My son participated in his Diwali celebrations at school, really enjoyed it, and I look forward to many more. What I was commenting on was the fact that for so many years, Canada has gone to great lengths to argue that religion has no place in school. Consequently, things like saying Merry Christmas are discouraged. Teaching children about the story of Christmas as it relates to Jesus' birth, the manger, the Virgin Mary, etc., is all discouraged. But when it comes to Diwali, my son learned about Diwali. He learned about the gods and the fight and the triumph of good over evil. So my question was, why is it that if you're saying that there can be no religion, then that means that even Diwali as a celebration should not happen? I also think that if we're going to have open and honest teachings about what Diwali is according to the Hindu faith, then we should equally be able to talk about Christmas and what it means according to the Christian faith. I don't know why that is something that I'm not really sure why anyone interpreted that any other way. I did not say, that my son wasn't allowed to go or that I don't want him to participate. All I said was, if we can teach Diwali, then we should also be able to teach Christmas and any other religious celebration for that matter. So what I was saying in that post specifically was that if we're saying that, we can't teach Diwali and we can't teach Christmas, then is the problem religion in schools or is it Christianity in schools? And that was the question that I asked. It was a question that I raised. And I don't think, and I heard some people say, yeah, well, there's a Christmas tree at my kid's school. What are you talking about? Christmas is not about a Christmas tree. Neither is it about Santa Claus. Those are commercialized stories that we've created to divert from the story of Christmas, which is the birth of Jesus Christ. And so all I was saying was there needs to be balance. If we're going to be able to talk openly about one, we should be able to talk openly about the other.
That's right. In your bold video coming out against the backlash, you said something along the lines, I'm not pushing for exclusion, but for balance. And I'll link that in the written article below. Now, I just have a couple of words, speaking of backlash, that were said against you and your comments from some prominent people here. So we had the NDP BC Solicitor and Minister for Safety, Gary Bagg, came out. He referred to your comments as spreading hate and division and not to be tolerated. The Vancouver mayor came out and he said that your views do not align with his, nor do they align with the Vancouver police. And most surprisingly, I would say, out of everybody who came out is MLA Eleanor Sturko. Now, that is a Conservative MLA for Surrey Cloverdale. And she spoke about another one of your comments, which I'll get you to address. She says, your comment was offensive against the transgender community and makes it harder for policing. I'm going to ask you what you felt in particular about Ms. Sturko's comment and give your side of the story to what you said.
Ms. Sturko's comment really shocked me in a way that I'm still trying to make sense of. And the reason is because on November 21st at the Vancouver Police Board meeting, I spoke in the public section of the meeting about violence against police officers. And I spoke specifically, I asked the question during a presentation about whether or not we've seen a decline in violence against officers since sort of COVID and George Floyd. And I was told that while there has been a decline, we're still seeing that. And I put out an appeal to the public, and I said, we have normalized seeing police officers be attacked, be spat on, be cursed at. And, we don't see that as abnormal. We've become desensitized. It's not a shocking thing anymore to the public. And I said on November 21st, in the public portion of the meeting, that I would like to ask Vancouverites to please be more mindful of who our officers are. I've had an opportunity to work directly with a number of our police officers, and I can't speak for all departments, but I can say wholeheartedly that Vancouver Police is truly Canada's best. The men and women, and there are always exceptions, but overall, the men and women who serve at the Vancouver Police Department are exceptional human beings. When they wake up in the morning, they leave their families, they leave their friends, and they come to work. And their only hope at the end of the day is that they're going to make it home safe, that they're going to make it home alive. And I wanted to humanize our officers who for so long, I feel, have been made to be seen as almost like these others that you don't really need to consider how they feel. These are human beings. They're people's kids. Whenever we swear in new recruits, I look at their parents' faces and I listen to Chief Adam Palmer reassure those parents that we're going to take care of your kids. We're going to make sure to the best of our ability that we consistently bring home, that they're able to come home safe. And so for Eleanor to say, just a few short days later, that the same person who called, and I'm the only board member, for the record, in the whole time that I've been on this board for 3 years, I'm the only board member that I know of that has gone on record to ask the public to be more mindful of the police. And I did that as a Black woman, okay? I'm part of a community where empathy for the police is not necessarily a big selling point. And I put that aside, whether or not it would make me popular in my community. And I said, because I know who these men and women are, please, when you see them on the streets, exercise a little bit of love. I'll give you a little story. I went on a ride along, and I'll address Eleanor shortly. I went on a ride along with a police officer, which is an opportunity where board members get to sit in a car for a number of hours and go around the city and patrol with a police officer. And we saw a group of kids, about 400 kids that were trying to cross the street. And so this police officer said, you know what, I'm going to make it easy for them. I'm going to move my car in a way to block traffic so that they can move across the street as a group as opposed to each having to wait for the lights. As he was doing this for them, the kids were yelling profanities at him, F the police, all kinds of horrible things that I will not repeat. And I thought to myself, this man literally has gone to make it so that you can cross the street. And whatever you think of police, that's not what this is about. In this moment, this police officer was going out of his way to make crossing the street easier for these kids. And in response to that was being hurled profanities. And I still watched him in spite of that, make sure that all 400 or so were able to cross over. His body language didn't change. He didn't express regret for having helped. And it made me think of that moment, like, most of us don't even have that internal discipline to say, I'm going to help someone. That person repays you by cursing you out and you continue to help, And so this is me. This is Comfort, who has spent time with officers. I'm empathetic towards officers. I've put out a call for the people of Vancouver to show empathy to officers. And then 4 or 5 days later, someone tells me that I am making life harder for officers on the front line. Clearly, Eleanor did not read my comment. For her to say that I would be responsible for making life harder for police officers, I think is incredibly offensive. And I'm very hurt by the fact that my MLA, because I live in South Surrey, that my MLA would say that about me. And then on her comment about the transgender community and how my comments spew hate towards them, I had to respond to that because I really was taken aback by that. I'm not going to sit here and be one of the folks that say, I've got a transgender friend, so therefore I'm a friend of the community. Forget all of that. In the 3 years that I was on the board, when I joined the board, the Vancouver Police Department had not been invited to participate in any pride parades for 5 years. There was a long-standing beef, if you will, between the police and the community. When I joined, they saw my joining as a sign that, okay, there's someone different here. And I was one of the first board members invited to then participate in the Anti-Homophobia Day, and I went. It was a 7 o'clock in the morning event. I found a babysitter for my 2-year-old, and I was like, I'm not going to miss this. And I've been a very big supporter of our Out on Patrol program at the Vancouver Police Department, which supports gay police officers and making sure that people know that there are gay police officers and that we create a welcoming environment for them. And so I've been an advocate, a champion in the community. I've been an advocate. I've been an ally in the community. And what's upsetting is that I said absolutely nothing in that post about transgendered children. What I was calling for in that post were parental rights and compassion. I was saying that when a parent hears or learns that their child wants to transition, that can, for a lot of parents, be very difficult news. Simply because as a parent, you plan for your child. You have dreams and aspirations for your child. Some of those are on the lines of gender. And so we shouldn't villainize and demonize parents just because their initial reaction out of fear is to reject what their child is saying. Instead, I think we need to create more supports, give that parent an opportunity to meet with the parents of other children who've had that transition. Enable those parents to meet with an adult who maybe transitioned when they were young to see what life was like for that individual. But we're so quick to cancel, yell at, demonize, and villainize parents, and that's pitting children and parents against each other. I don't want to see that. I don't want a society where families and homes are broken, and that's all I was saying.
Well, it seems like the Jazz Johals of the world are so happy that Miss Eleanor Sturko came out and said that coming from the Conservative Party, but her statement doesn't seem to be aligning with others in the party who have come out essentially in your defense. None other than the president of the Conservative Party has come out saying that cancel culture should have stopped. You should have your job back. We also have this MLA here as well, just recently went out, and Jazz Johal, who keeps telling the world that the backlash against you is because he shared that on Reddit, seems to be almost calling these other Conservatives out for supporting you. I wanted to speak to you first before reaching out to Ms. Sturko to let her hear your words. I'm going to send those to her. If she's I'm going to let you know what she said right now. So you told me that you literally found out you had resigned by the news. Tell us what's happened and what's next for you. What was it like finding out you resigned that way? Explain that and what's next in the cards.
Yeah, so before the board chair and I even had an opportunity to speak, a statement had already been prepared by the board informing the public that I'd been asked to resign. That statement was made public on the Vancouver Police Board website, and it was also already sent out to media. And so by the time I even found out that I was being featured in the media, because I didn't even know a lot of what was happening. I'm not on X, and well, I wasn't on X until this morning. So I didn't know I didn't even know Jazz Johal. I don't know anything about him. So I was completely unaware of what was going on online. And yeah, the news articles that were posted well before I had an opportunity to speak with the board chair indicated that I had resigned, that I had been asked to resign. And so I'm just really surprised because what's shocking to me is that I don't think anybody in Canada, and beyond me, I don't think anybody in Canada should be afraid of being fired for being conservative. And I think at the very least that the board should have done a bit of due diligence. They should have. Frank told me on the call that he had not even read the comments yet. So my question is, as board chair, you haven't read the comments yet. So on what grounds are you requesting my resignation? Just because, and I was told that 4 people sent an email to the board office demanding that I resign. I haven't seen those emails. I don't know what they wrote in the emails. Nobody investigated what they were claiming. No one even checked to see if what they were alleging was true. 4 emails come in saying Comfort should resign, and the immediate reaction is tell the media that she has resigned. She's been instructed to resign, forced to resign. And then I'm just supposed to sort of accept that. And for the board chair to admit that he hasn't even read the comments, but you made a statement. How are you able to make a statement if you haven't read the comments that I wrote? So I'm just... I don't want to see a Canada where people are fired because they're conservative. We're all trying to make this country better. We all have different views on how that gets done. And those views are allowed to be different. It's a big country. The solutions that make sense for BC are not necessarily going to make sense for Alberta. I would never cancel someone because their views were different than mine. And honestly, and that's why in my video, I made sure to include my own words, my own text. This is what I wrote. And what a lot of people have said to me is, when they saw my words for themselves, they were really surprised about the backlash. Because when you do read it yourself, it really leaves you to ask, what's the problem?
At Rebel News, we don't back down from bringing you the other side of the story, and it's such an honor to be on a team that's able to do so. But the truth is, none of us rebels can give the public that truth without any of you. So special thanks to any of you who have ever watched and shared our reports, and of course, those of you who make the reports possible through your generous donations. We truly appreciate your support, and I know Canada is forever changed because of it. If you'd like to find out more about how you can support our reports and keep them going strong, you can go to rebelnews.com/donate. Thank you very much.